Enghouse gets asked as a company is that organizations may already have a Skype for Business environment and have been using it for internal communications, and are now starting to think about how they cross that bridge to start to use it in a more public-facing, customer-facing way. And there's lots of questions about how do we do it, what are the risks, what should we look out for, how do we prepare for that. So this webinar is really structured to try and address some of those questions. So to start with, I'll just kind of step through some thoughts and trends that we see in the marketplace that are driving customer behavior, and then we'll step into the Microsoft story and then the landmark story to round off with. So I think one of the biggest drivers and changes in the marketplace right now is the shift from a physical world to a virtual world. And if you think about yourself and how you consume things, if you think about music, there used to be a time, if you've got as much grey hair as I've got, you used to excitedly as a child jump on a bus and drive down to Woolworths, as was then, and buy a physical record once a week. Nowadays, instant gratification, you can buy things through iTunes, or you can stream films or whatever through Spotify or Netflix. So that whole shift to not actually owning things but buying a subscription to a virtual license or ownership of something is a big change in the way consumers are behaving. The second driver is that of automation, self-service, AI. So most of you have seen all the adverts on TV for Google and others that are advertising their home-based AI devices. And you're starting to see that cascade more and more into the consumer world. So if you think about yourself checking in for an airline, 10 years ago it seemed perfectly plausible that you'd stand in the queue for half an hour for someone to type in 1,000 numbers and then press print on a keyboard. These days you've got an app on your phone and you're more than willing to self-serve. And as many industry analysts, people like Gartner, Forrester, IDC and many others are sort of pointing to the fact that in just less than 2 years' time, 85% of interactions will pass through a self-service platform of some way, shape or form. And that therefore means that there's about 15% that's left that's a little bit awkward and a little bit ugly because it won't pass through that automated platform. And that presents in itself a set of challenges for organizations from a technology perspective. And always worth considering here that consumers outspend businesses in terms of IT spend by a ratio of 10 to 1. So if you think about yourself and you look in your own kind of pocket or bag, you've probably got a work phone, a home phone, a laptop, you may have an iPad, a Surface, a Kindle. Just look at the amount of tech that's in your house right now as a family compared to, say, a decade ago. And so for businesses, there's a whole raft of things to try and play catch up with, one of which is obviously integrating systems in a way that allow customers to get that effortless customer service that they're striving for. And as we talked about at the start, as that shift from the physical to the virtual world permeates, customers expect service far, far quicker than they used to. They expect it to be intuitive and work in the same way that applications do on their personal devices. And the scary part is that most customers will give an organization, if there's a problem, they'll give them one chance to fix it, and if they don't fix it, they'll walk. And so 86% of customers, if they don't get what they want, are going to leave you as a customer. And if you think about a westernized world and a westernized economy, there's only really 3 ways to differentiate, and that's price, product, or service. And most companies aren't that innovative and haven't got really cool new products. So they don't really want to compete on price, and that really leaves service. So losing a customer is pretty painful for most businesses. So as we move forward and start to think about that in a slightly more granular way, customers really want that effortless customer service, and they want it to happen in the shortest amount of time possible. They want to invest the least amount of time and effort to get the maximum reward. And part of that is they expect you to know who they are. And in itself, that doesn't sound like a particularly complex problem to solve. But when you start to layer in different customer segments, different product types, different multitude of different channels that have grown up over the last 5 to 10 years, you start to see how exponentially complex the problem becomes. And many of you will have experienced that feeling of being on a web page, you've opened up a chat session, started to ask a question in the chat window, realize that you've got to default back to the contact center, and the moment you start speaking with someone, it's like a Control-Alt-Delete moment where everything that went before has been forgotten, and you go back to the very beginning and have to start the conversation right from the start of explaining who you are. When we think about that in terms of customer effort, that's not good. That puts a lot of load and time on the customer. So smart organizations have sort of got this digital by design approach. They're mapping their journey, so they spend a lot of time up front thinking about the journey that they want customers to go on and presenting those customers only with the channels that are appropriate for them and the interaction that they're trying to do. They're aligning their staff and their people, their policies and their systems around that journey to make sure that it's optimized to speed a customer through as quickly as possible. And then when we think about the business, one of the biggest business drivers, and if you think about 10 days ago, if you happened to be in Heathrow Airport trying to get on a BA flight, you probably would ask yourself, how much would BA have paid at that point in time to have some resilience, some agility, and some flexibility within their IT infrastructure? That ability to flip from one system to another, to spin up new servers and scale up their operation, to bring in third-party resources as and when are needed to create some more human bandwidth to the operation is key. And so what we see, organizations investing in putting the right foundation in place to build the right services as they move forward. And people tend to be doing it in a controlled way. So it's not necessarily a big bang that you go from one day you're using legacy systems and the next day you've switched to completely digital. People tend to be doing it, division by division, department by department, location by location, and sweating those existing assets down and managing their migration in a controlled way. And so I think from a customer service perspective, whilst people may start off with the mindset of cost reduction being a key driver to move towards a Skype for Business environment, when we look at it through the contact center and customer service perspective, actually cost is a nice byproduct and a derivative of what's going on, but it's not necessarily the overriding objective. Most people are trying to improve their customer service as they go. So when we think about two of the kind of key constituencies within an organization that are helping facilitate and drive this change forward, first off, we've got the IT team. And from an IT team, they're really focused on connecting the enterprise, and one of the great byproducts of a Skype for Business implementation or UC implementation is that ability to see presence. So you can see who is available within your organization, and once you align that with capabilities like Active Directory, you can really start to see the skill sets that people have, the access to systems they have, and start to make intelligent decisions in real time that this person in my organization right now is going to be the best person to help this customer solve their problem. And if you think about the cost savings that you're making, if 85% of interactions are pushing through a self-service platform, it would be remiss not to reinvest some of that saving into the 15% that don't pass through straight through the process. And you need to be able to connect to the middle and back office of your organization and start to fold those areas and departments into the customer service focus. Then we see IT departments thinking about security, and there's endless examples, TalkTalk being one of them, the NHS 10 days ago with the WannaCry virus. There's your single point of weakness. Every time you add a new channel or a new application, that can be that single point of weakness. So IT departments quite rightly need to have a very strong focus around security. There's a lot of benefits as you transition to the digital world, but you need to be cognizant of some of the risks, and that security is part of that. And finally, we see our IT departments focusing on providing a framework for big data, capturing that data and providing insight and understanding into the customer-facing organization of how things can be improved. On the flip side, when we think about the contact center team, we see people starting to focus more heavily around workforce optimization and management. And again, this has become a lot more complex than it used to be. It's not just a case of saying, I need 20 agents on a Monday morning and 15 on a Thursday evening. you need certain types of skill sets for certain types of channels at certain points in the day. So aligning the right skill sets to the right channels at the points when you have kind of the specific load points within the business is key. And we also see people focusing on social service. So some of the best customer service agents any organization has is their existing customers. And numerous examples around the world, people like giffgaff, people like Sony with their PlayStation platform, an ability to service huge volumes of customers with very, very lean human resource within the servicing organization, because they're relying on customers helping customers, and they've provided the customers with the tool to do that. And finally, we see contact center teams focused around quality management, using applications like real-time speech analytics to ensure that the right things are being said in the right way at the right time, looking at the high performers within their organization and understanding what they say and when to increase sales, looking at things from a regulatory point of view to make sure that things are said in a regulatory compliant way. So there's sort of some of the drivers that we see out in the field today. And so with that said, I'm now going to hand over to Emily, and she's going to ask you a poll question.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeremy. So what I want to do now is actually to launch our poll. So please use the buttons to put your best answer there. So what is the primary driver for change within customer-facing operations? Is it reduced cost, improved service, keeping up with your competition, or increased revenues? Please vote now. We'll just give that a few moments. Okay. And what I'll do is just share the results with you all. So you'll see a huge number of said is obviously service. So Peter, with yourself in a landmark hat on, do you think that would be your driver out of those options?
Yeah, this was very much, well, I mean, all of the options are valid, but I think over in Landmark, improving service was one of our key drivers. Really understanding our customer and getting as close to that customer as we can, and making sure that the service that they get, is second to none. Really was our key driver. So I think I go with the majority there.
And on Kerri, on the Microsoft side, would you agree with that as sort of a service or reduced cost, or what would you have thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, customers have all different, obviously, organisational objectives, and all four of those are very valid. But actually, improving service segues into all of the other answers, actually. So I'm not surprised to see that coming out on top. I'm also delighted to be able to talk to that story a little bit as I take you through my session. So, yeah, totally agree.
Perfect, thank you.